On June 9th, 68 AD, in a squalid villa on the outskirts of Rome, a 30-year-old man had a dagger driven into his throat. With that act, the blood of Augustus, the dynasty that founded the Roman Empire, was extinguished forever. But for millions of people, that man did not die that day. To the Christians, he was not just a fallen emperor. He was the beast, the 666, the Antichrist who had been wounded to death but would live to bring about the end of times. His name has been synonymous with pure evil for 2 millennia, Nero. We have been told he was mad, that he burned his own capital for inspiration while singing verses of Homer, that he murdered his mother, his wives, and his brother out of pure sadistic whim. But what if the history we know is a lie? What if the monster was actually the victim of the most successful fake news campaign in antiquity? Today, modern archaeology has unearthed evidence that contradicts the ancient texts, from revolving dining rooms that defied the engineering of their time to economic decrees that favored the poor over the rich. Prepare yourself, because we are going to exhume the corpse of official history. We are going to travel from the dark secrets of Agrippina's bedroom to the impossible technology of the Golden House. You aren't going to meet the myth. You are going to meet the man the world feared would rise from the dead. The Digital Historian presents The True Story of Nero. To understand the madness, one must first look at the blood. Nero was born Lucius Domitius Ahenobarbus in the coastal town of Antium. His surname, Ahenobarbus, means bronze beard, but in Rome it was synonymous with violence. His father, Gnaeus, was a man who gouged out eyes in street fights and ran over children with his chariot for amusement. When Nero was born, his father uttered a phrase that would chill anyone's blood. From me and Agrippina, nothing can be born that is not a curse for humanity. And then there was the mother, Agrippina the Younger, sister of Caligula, niece of Claudius, granddaughter of Germanicus, a woman who had survived imperial purges by learning one vital lesson: power is the only security. Agrippina didn't just want to be the emperor's mother, she wanted to rule. After the death of her first husband, whom she is rumored to have poisoned to seize his fortune, Agrippina executed her masterstroke. She married her own uncle, the Emperor Claudius. Claudius already had a son, Britannicus, but Agrippina manipulated the Roman legal system so that Claudius would adopt Nero, a 13-year-old boy, placing him first in the line of succession. And when Claudius began to have regrets and looked toward his biological son again, the emperor stopped breathing. Official history speaks of a plate of delicious mushrooms seasoned with poison by the famous poisoner Locusta under Agrippina's orders. On October 13th, 54 AD, Nero, only 16 years old, was proclaimed emperor. But look at these coins. This is unheard of in Roman numismatics. Nero and his mother face to face as equals. On some issues, her title appears on the obverse, the side of honor. Rome did not have an emperor. It had a diarchy. Agrippina received ambassadors, listened to Senate sessions from behind a curtain, and eliminated her political rivals without consulting her son. But Nero was not alone. He had 2 mentors, the Stoic philosopher Seneca, the most brilliant mind of his age, and Burrus, the pragmatic prefect of the Praetorian Guard. They knew that a woman openly ruling Rome would lead to civil war. A silent struggle for Nero's soul began. And here is the first surprise. Under the influence of Seneca and Burrus, Nero's first 5 years, the Quinquennium Neronis, were an administrative golden age. The treasury was reformed, corrupt governors were prosecuted, and power was given to the Senate. Nero even proposed abolishing indirect taxes to lower the cost of living for the poor, a measure so radical that the Senate blocked it for fear of bankrupting the state. This is not the behavior of a madman, it is that of a populist ruler. But in the palace, blood was about to spill. Nero began to rebel. He fell in love with a slave girl, Acte, ignoring his wife Octavia, his mother's ally. Agrippina, furious at losing control, played her most dangerous card. She threatened to support Britannicus, Claudius's legitimate son, as the true emperor. It was her death sentence, and Britannicus's as well. At an imperial dinner, the young prince fell to the floor, convulsing. Nero, reclining indifferently, said it was an epileptic fit. No one believed him. Poison had entered the dynasty to stay. The situation with his mother became unsustainable. In the year 59 AD, instigated by his ambitious new lover Poppaea Sabina, Nero decided to cross the sacred line. Killing a mother was the supreme crime in Rome, an act that attracted the Furies. The plan seems ripped from a Hollywood movie. Nero invited his mother to a party in the Bay of Naples and offered her a magnificent ship for her return. But the ship was a mechanical trap designed by Admiral Anicetus to collapse at sea. The lead roof fell, the ship sank, but Agrippina was the daughter of Germanicus. Strong and a survivor, she swam through the wreckage while her handmaids were beaten to death with oars, and she reached the shore in silence. When Nero learned that Agrippina was still alive, terror paralyzed him. He knew his mother would move the army against him. There was no longer room for accidents. He sent assassins directly to her bedroom. The historian Tacitus recounts the end with chilling prose. When the centurion drew his sword, Agrippina tore her tunic, exposed her abdomen, and screamed, "Strike here! Strike the womb that bore such a monster!"
Ventrem feri!
With that blow, the mother died, and the tyrant was born, or rather, the artist was born. Without his mother, and following the death of Burrus and the retirement of Seneca shortly after, Nero became unleashed. But his vice was not war or administration, it was art. Nero wanted to be a star. He introduced the Neronia, Greek games in Rome. He forced elderly senators to dance and act. To the traditional Roman mindset, which valued gravitas, seriousness, seeing their emperor singing on a stage was more offensive than seeing him sign death warrants. It was a national humiliation. But, and this is key, the common people loved him. Nero gave them bread, gave them incredible spectacles, and humiliated the rich senators that the people hated. He was the first populist emperor, a kind of rock star. On the night of July 18th, 64 AD, the Roman summer was suffocating. In the oil shops near the Circus Maximus, a spark jumped. Within hours, Rome was an inferno. The fire lasted 6 days and 7 nights. It stopped briefly, then flared up again for 3 more days. Of the city's 14 districts, 3 were pulverized, and 7 were left in ruins. Ancient temples, trophies of past wars, all lost. And this is where the image everyone knows comes in. Nero in a tower, dressed as an actor, playing the lyre while his city dies. Let's contradict the classic caricature. First of all, Nero was not in Rome. He was in his hometown of Antium, 50 kilometers from the capital. When he received the news, he didn't stay singing. He raced back to Rome without a guard, straight into the chaos. Sources tell us he coordinated the firefighting efforts, opened his own imperial gardens to house refugees, and lowered the price of grain to prevent looting. So why does history blame him? Because he needed the land. Over the smoking ashes of central Rome, Nero did not build social housing. He built the Domus Aurea, the Golden House, a palace complex so immense that Romans joked they would have to move to the neighboring city of Veii. It had an artificial lake where the Colosseum stands today. It had forests with wild animals and featured cutting-edge technology. In 2009, archaeologists discovered the base of his famous revolving dining room on the Palatine Hill. Powered by hydraulic mechanisms, the floor rotated day and night, mimicking the movement of the heavens while spraying perfume over the guests. It was a marvel, but it was a marvel built upon the tragedy of his people. The rumor that he had started the fire to clear the land became deafening. Nero needed a culprit fast, and he found the perfect scapegoat, a small, marginal Jewish sect hated for their secret rituals, the Christians. Tacitus, who had no sympathy for Christians, describes with horror what followed. It was not justice, it was a sadistic spectacle. Christians were covered in animal skins so dogs would tear them apart. And in an atrocity that would define his legacy, Nero had hundreds of them tied to posts in his gardens, covered them in pitch, and set them on fire to use as human torches to illuminate his night parties. There, under the light of those burning bodies, the Antichrist was born. Terror breeds conspiracy. In the year 65, the Roman elite said, "Enough." Senators, knights, and guard officers formed the Pisonian conspiracy to assassinate Nero. Among them was the poet Lucan, the emperor's former friend. But the conspiracy was betrayed by a freedman. Nero's revenge was total. He ordered the suicide of his old mentor Seneca in a scene that mimicked the death of Socrates. Paranoia seized Rome. Anyone could be next. With Rome turned into a slaughterhouse, Nero did the unthinkable. He went on an artistic tour. In the year 66, he traveled to Greece. He altered the sacred calendar so that all the great games, Olympic, Pythian, Nemean, and Isthmian, would be held in a single year. He competed in chariot races. At Olympia, he fell from his chariot and almost died. But the terrified judges declared him the winner. He won 1,808 victory crowns. "Only the Greeks know how to listen," he said. While he played at being Apollo, a massive rebellion erupted in Judea, and in the West, generals sharpened their swords. In 68, Governor Vindex rebelled in Gaul. Galba joined from Hispania. The key was the Praetorian Guard. Its prefect, Nymphidius Sabinus, bribed the soldiers to betray Nero with the promise of an astronomical sum of money. The Senate declared Nero hostis publicus. He could be beaten to death by anyone. Nero woke up in his palace and found it empty. His guards had gone. His friends had fled. They had even stolen the bed linen. He fled barefoot and in disguise to the villa of his freedman Phaon. There, hearing the galloping of horses coming to arrest him, Nero tried to summon the courage to kill himself. He tested the edge of 2 daggers, but put them back away. He wept. He lamented that such a great artist had to die. Finally, with the help of his secretary Epaphroditus, he drove the dagger into his throat. His last words were not for Rome, nor for the gods. They were for his own ego. Qualis artifex pereo. What an artist dies with me. He was 30 years old. With him died the dynasty of the Caesars. But the story doesn't end here. In fact, it gets stranger. Nero's body was buried quietly by his former lovers, but because there was no public funeral, the people refused to believe he was dead. In the East, prophecies emerged. It was said that Nero had escaped to Parthia and would return at the head of an Oriental army to destroy Rome. This was not a simple urban legend. Impostors appeared, the false Neros. One of them, almost 20 years after the emperor's death, looked so much like him and played the lyre so well that he almost convinced the Parthian Empire to invade Rome in his name. The fear of Nero's return lasted for decades. This terror seeped into the most mysterious text of the Bible, the Book of Revelation. Written in an era where the fear of Nero redivivus was latent, the book speaks of a beast that was wounded to death but survived. If you take the name Nero Caesar, transliterated into Hebrew, and sum the numerical value of its letters, the result is chilling: 666. For the early Christians, Nero was not just a bad emperor. He was the incarnation of cosmic evil, the harbinger of the end of the world. Nero was a tyrant, a murderer, and a megalomaniac, but he was also a product of his time, a man who tried to transform the empire through art and culture, and who paid the price for alienating those who wrote history. He didn't burn Rome, but his legacy was reduced to ashes. He died believing himself an artist, and history turned him into its most perfect villain. Was Nero the Antichrist, or was he the victim of a poisonous family and a vengeful Senate? If you enjoyed this journey into the dark side of Rome, like and subscribe to The Digital Historian, and tell us in the comments, if you could travel back in time, would you save Nero, or would you hand him the dagger yourself? See you in the next episode.